Welcome time travelers and welcome new time travelers. As always, if you're new to this channel and enjoy learning history, one event at a time, don't forget to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Without further ado, let's get into it. Today we're starting in 1642 when the Marquis de Cinq-Mars, a favorite of King Louis the 13th of France, signed a secret treaty with King Philip IV of Spain in a plot to overthrow Cardinal Richelieu. In 1741, the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II, who at first was co-ruler from 1765 to 1780, with his mother, Maria Theresa, and then acted as sole ruler from 1780 to 1790 of the Australian Habsburg domain, was born. English astronomer William Herschel observed this day in 1781 the seventh planet from the Sun, Uranus, first described by him as a curious, either nebulous star or perhaps a comet, and named for the father of God, Saturn. Moving on to 1809, shortly after Sweden surrendered Finland to Russia, Swedish King Gustav IV Adolf was overthrown. Now we're going to make a stop in 1870 when artist William J. Glaucon, whose painting of street scenes and urban life rejected the decadence of the 19th century academic art, introduction of matter-of-fact realism to American art, was born. 11 years later, in 1881, Tsar Alexander II of Russia was assassinated in St. Petersburg. Just 3 short years later, in 1884, al-Mahdi began the siege of Khartoum, capital of Sudan, which was defeated by Egyptian garnish under the British General Charles George Chinese Gordon. 1886 brought us American aerial photographer William W. Stevens, who took the first photo of Earth's curvature in 1930 and the first photos of the moon's shadow on Earth during a solar eclipse in 1932, was born in Belfast, Maine. In 1911, L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of the Church of Scientology, was born in Tilden, Nebraska. On this day in 1925, the Tennessee legislature passed a bill that banned the teaching of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution in the state's public schools. In a highly publicized trial, high school teacher John T. Scopes was later convicted of breaking the law. Not sure why they banned that. Anyway, in 1938 is when the Anschluss political union between Austria and Germany was announced. In 1954, communist-led Vietnam forces launched a large-scale assault against the Indonesians' stronghold of Dien Bien Phu. In 1965, President Johnson warned Governor George C. Wallace of Alabama at a White House conference that police brutality in Salem must not be repeated. 1986 is when Soviet communists Leonid Kazim and Vladimir Solovyov was sent to aboard a Soviet spacecraft to rendezvous with the space station Mir and became its first occupants. I remember in an episode of Quantum Leap, when Ben Song was the leaper, they actually went to Mir. I don't know if that was the same Mir or if it was something completely different. Anyway, our next stop is going to be in 1996 when a gunman invaded a primary school in the small Scottish town of Dunblane and shot to death 16 young children and their teacher before turning the gun on himself. The school shooting resulted in various changes to British gun laws. Rightfully so. 2002 is when Jamal Abal al-Amin, a Muslim cleric who, as a prominent black activist in the 1960s, was known as H. Rap Brown, is sentenced to life in prison without parole for having murdered a sheriff's deputy in Fulton County, Georgia. 2012 is when Encyclopedia Britannica Inc. announced that it was ceasing publication of its print version, the oldest, longest, continuous published English language general print encyclopedia. Everything that I find for this day in history is because of Britannica, or at least its online version of it. The following year, in 2013, George Mario Bergoglio, the Archbishop of Buenos Aires, was elected Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, taking the name Francis I. He succeeded Benedict XVI, who had resigned. Now, if you remember from one of my previous videos, their rings, once they resign or pass away, their rings get destroyed and a new ring is made for the oncoming Pope. 4 years ago, in 2020, Breonna Taylor, an African-American EMT, was killed by Louisville, Kentucky police officers as they burst into her apartment during a botched raid. Her death led to a massive protest by a Black Lives Matter activist and others who called for police reform. The following year, in 2021, American boxer Marvin Hagler, a durable middleweight champion who was one of the greatest boxers in the 1970s and 80s, passed away at the age of 66. And with that, we return to 2024 and our current history. Let's see what this year has in store for us. Until then.